Hello everyone, Karnasa here, and welcome back to Kerbal Gets Real, the next Millenia. And it has been an awful long time since I've uploaded one of these. I'll talk about that a little bit later on in this video, but for now, a bit of a recap to kind of bring you up to speed what has been going on. In the last episode, we sent 3 missions over to Mars, which we are seeing arriving now. We have a base on the south pole of the moon, the lunar South Pole Outpost, as it is named, very much akin to Jamestown from For All Mankind. We've sent a few relay networks over to Venus, to the moon, to Earth as well. Yeah, we've got one around Earth, and we also have a space station in low Earth orbit, and that's pretty much it. When I lay it out like that, it doesn't actually sound all that impressive. Oh well. We've got plenty of time to do a lot more exciting stuff with this series. Anyway, what we are seeing now is the Mars glider finally unfurling its wings using those infernal robotics motors that we have attached. Obviously, we do want to unfurl the wings so that we can gain some lift in the rather thin atmosphere of Mars. We treated to a few shots from the camera on the bottom of this craft. So what this craft's mission was to do was to take some nice aerial photographs of the poles of Mars, because when I want to send a surface base later on in this series, well, we need some aerial recon to make sure that we pick a nice landing spot, I guess. We are also going to be sending over a ScanSat mission, which we will see shortly, but you know, it's nicer to get a few images as well. So what I'm doing here is I am attempting to slow myself down. You can see we're going over 3,000 meters per second at the moment, and I thought that was just a tad too fast to be coming into the Mars atmosphere, and this probably, actually, in hindsight, wasn't the best of ideas, because it's going to make our descent a lot steeper than I would have liked. So I don't know, maybe setting my Mars periaps at about 50,000 meters might have been a bit better. Ooh, can't speak now. A bit better for this mission in total, but there we go, we can see we are coming over the South Pole now, and we are getting those all-important photographs or film footage that we did want from this mission. So what we're going to do is we are going to ditch this slowy down stage. I can't think of a better word for it at the moment. And we are going to attempt to flip this plane so it is flying. And there we go. We are flying over the surface of Mars. We have a glider on another planet, although we are going 2,050 meters per second, which really is a little bit fast. I would have liked to have been coming a bit slower at 40,000 meters, and now the plane has also decided it does not want to be a plane. No, it has decided that it would rather be a bird, and the wings are going to begin flapping quite vigorously, and they snap off, and that of course leads to the craft impacting Mars at about 1,000 meters per second. Not the best. Well, that was a bit of a failure. So what we're going to be doing now is coming to M-Post-03. This is the scanning satellite that I did mention earlier on. Obviously, I do have ScanSat installed, and I would quite like some lovely maps of the surface of the red planet. So as we come back later on with surface bases and the like, we can pick somewhere that is going to have the resources that we do so desperately require in order to make it semi-self-sufficient. We wouldn't like to land somewhere and discover that it is completely barren. No, this is going to help pick a landing spot. And there we go, we can see we have made ourselves a nice polar orbit, and now all of the scanning equipment is going to be deployed. So the final mission that we are going to be sending over to Mars, or that we have sent over to Mars in this transfer window, is a relay network and also a Phobos sample return mission. I'm not going to show me setting up the relay network here because I have done that several times in this series already. And to be honest, you can only really show that so many times before it gets mind-numbingly boring. So we're going to focus on the Phobos sample return for this section of the video. So what I'm doing now is I am capturing in a relatively nice low orbit, but it is very, very, very inclined, not inclined, eccentric, that is the word I was looking for, so I can make my inclination change as far out as I possibly can, requiring a fair bit less delta V in order to perform that. Then what we're going to do is we are going to circularize our orbit. So this orbit is in the inclination of Phobos, and that is where my relay network is going to be. I didn't really care for it to be anywhere else, but I wanted to get into the same inclination as Phobos so that we can get the lander over there quite successfully. There we go. What we're doing now is we are circularizing our orbit whilst we still have all of the parts of this mission attached. That way I can set up my, I've forgotten the word, resonant orbit. Yes, I can set up my resonant orbit quite easily, and I can also get to Phobos quite easily with the two sections of the mission that were still on that carrier spacecraft. But now what we're doing is we are performing our burn to encounter Phobos, with Mars in the background, and we get a lovely shot of Olympus Mons as this performs that burn to get over to that rock. And here we are, the rock is now on display, and Phobos, well, it's quite tricky to get to, due to the fact that it has a very, very, very low sphere of influence. It's very, very small. It is a tiny, tiny celestial body, so getting an encounter with Phobos can be quite tricky, but you can see here, I did indeed manage to get said encounter, and now of course we are performing our retrograde burn so we can capture in a nice Phobos orbit. So I wanted to pick a specific spot on Phobos where I could see Mars in the background and it was light as well, because it would be great. I love the view of Mars from Phobos and I just wanted somewhere nice to land. And the great thing about Phobos, obviously, you are traveling at such I can't talk today, minuscule speeds around, so changing my inclination like this, changing my landing spot, really doesn't require an awful lot. There you go, we can see we have ditched the transfer stage over to Phobos now, and now we are relying on those 5 engines, which I have deactivated 4 of them to begin our final descent onto the surface, really. Yeah, Phobos really doesn't require an awful lot of oomph to get down on. It is like Gilly from stock, I guess, but I'm not even sure if it's even smaller than Gilly. You could sneeze and you would take off from the surface of Phobos. I think the orbital velocity is something like 8-9 meters per second. It's something crazy. But you can see we are now preparing this little sombrero lander. Well, I think it looks a little bit like a sombrero for its final stage of the journey down onto this rock, so it can gather more rocks and collect them up in its sombrero hat, and then take those even smaller rocks all the way back to Earth. Yes, there we go. We are flipping up now, and a little bit like the lunar module, the Soviet lunar module LK. What we're going to do, in order to land successfully, we are going to fire down on our RCS. Like the lunar module, obviously it had thrusters to push it into the surface of the moon, because as you can see, we drift across the surface of Phobos because we're going 0.1 meters per second, but that is enough to get a bit of a bounce. And there we go. With a bit of a downward thrust from those RCS thrusters, we are able to kind of cling to the surface a bit. We're going to gather some samples and return to this when we need to. So now we're going to come to our first launch of this episode, and this is going to be Luna 1. So I picked up the first crewed lunar landing quite a while ago, and I need to kind of design a series of missions that is going to be able to perform that contract. And this is what I have come up with, the original concept that I've come up with. It is very Apollo style. We're going to have a lander, an orbiter, we're going to have a bit of transposition and docking, all of that good stuff. And it is going to be launched on the Olympus, which is my super heavy class of launch vehicles. So I have said several times in this series already, I want to make sure that my launch vehicles, before I send crew on top of them, are all tried and tested. I know they're safe. We've done launch abort tests and all of that important stuff to ensure that our crews are as safe as they can possibly be. This is partly why this is an automated test, so there are no crew on board this at all. And I feel like it's gonna be probably Luna 3 or 4 will be the first one of these missions that is actually going to successfully touch down on the surface of the moon with a crew on board. Luna 1, which is what we're seeing now, is going to do a full mock-up of the landing, and it's just going to be automated, so there's going to be no crew on board. Luna 2, what will happen with that? We will send a crew to low Earth orbit. There we go. We saw the booster landing. Always nice when that happens. Yes, Luna 2, low Earth orbit. We're going to stick a crew there for the amount of time that it would take for a mission to get to the moon and back. The reason why I want to do this, in case of oversight on my behalf, really, if I have forgotten to put enough oxygen or anything like that in, that way I can return the crew immediately to Earth rather than being stuck on a translunar course. So that's why I'm going to do that. You can see I did overshoot the moon there a little bit, but I did do a bit of a correction to go basically smack bang into the surface of the moon. And here we have the transposition and docking of this stage, and the capsules that I am using, they are going to be the CST Starliner capsules, because that is what I have been using so far in this series. I've done launch abort tests, I've done pad abort tests, I've done loads of safety testing to ensure that these are going to be the capsules, the right capsule for the job. Now, a problem with the CST capsule, which some people might have already realized, is their heat shields, well, they are not lunar rated. Unfortunately, I didn't get the footage of the return of the orbiter because I forgot to hit record on OBS, so we're not going to see that burning up in the atmosphere. But yes, I do need to go for a different design for the orbiter because this will not make it safely back from the surface of the moon. So that's one flaw with this mission already. Luckily, I did this as an automated mission, so no crew were harmed in the filming of this video. But yeah, that is going to be, something that I do have to look into. It doesn't matter for the lander because I am just going to leave the lander around the surface of the moon. So as long as the lander can land successfully, which I really want it to do, because it is also it's a kind of variant of the lander that I've designed for the Lunar South Pole outpost. So I want to stick with the CST capsule for that as much as possible. It's kind of like I've got a system in place where it all fits together all nicely, so if I had to change that, it would be a crying shame. But obviously, as the lander is going to remain around the moon, it's not going to be going through any harsh atmospheric re-entry effects. No, it will just stay around the moon, so we don't have to worry about that problem. It is just the orbiter, the return module, that I do need to fix up. But now what we are going to be doing is we have detached from the orbiter, and we are going to attempt to land on the surface of the moon with this lander. Using those Hydrolox engines, they are very nice. They are not the Lunex config, but the RL10 high config, whichever RL10 config is in the late game and has throttle ability. There we go, we have touchdown. It was a nice gentle touchdown at about 2 meters per second. And yes, it was all rather good. And we still have a bit of fuel left in this stage. And in the second stage, the kind of stage that we're going to get back to meeting the orbiter, we have more than enough fuel on there. So what we're going to do, we are going to wait for that orbiter to do one orbit so we can try and follow it as well as we can. But I was having a few issues with engines that had been activated that shouldn't have been activated, and unfortunately, the landing stage of this lander did smash into the ascent stage and set us wildly off course. Now, because of this, we do not have enough delta V to get back up to orbit, which obviously is less than ideal. There we go, we are at 83,000 meters. This is me trying to circularize, and I think we fall about 100 meters per second of delta V short. If I would have had, if that landing section of this lander had worked and it had all gone according to plan, we would have had delta V to spare, but unfortunately, we do not. So what we're going to see now is this careening to its doom. We're going to watch it smash into the surface of the moon. Overall, there have been far too many failures for my liking in this episode, but oh well, we will learn from our mistakes, and there we go. Rip that lander. So the next thing that we are going to be turning our focus to is going to be the launch of our nuclear reactor that is going to power the Lunar South Pole outpost. This is once again launched on an Olympus launch vehicle because they are fast becoming the only launch vehicles that I will launch ever. I do need to go back to the Orpheus series of rockets and launch those a few times as well, but well, sending all of these rather heavy modules over to the moon does require quite a beefy launch vehicle to get them over there. So we can see we have deployed the payload fairing now, and one problem that I was having with this launch from now that is already happening is those radiators on the side were not supposed to be that big. I don't know what happened. TweakScale is probably having a bit of a bad day, but once again we are able to successfully land an Olympus booster. And yeah, because of that, they do clip into each other, which is not the end of the world, but it's a little bit unsightly, and I would rather not that happen, but oh well. Anyway, that's not the only thing that goes wrong with this mission. Like I said, there's been so many failures in this episode, so I forgot to turn the reactor off on the way to the moon. Which, yeah, without a huge amount of radiators on, it's going to overheat and explode, which is what it exactly does, unfortunately. So this whole mission, there we go, core overheating, shutting down. Yeah, this whole mission was doomed from the start, which is a shame. But, yeah, we're going to blow it up and try again. So we're going to quickly come into the vehicle assembly building and make a few slight edits. So the radiators on this, basically, I tested it and it worked with the radiators that I did have, but then I tried it in real life, or not a simulation, and they just flat out refused to work. So I went away, did all the maths, and it turns out that I need, I think, 16 of the largest radiators to run the nuclear reactor that is at the top of that tower at full capacity. So I'm going to get rid of all of the radiators from this section, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch radiator modules separately, which is going to be very expensive. Anyway, that has been done now, and that date on the right of the screen is incorrect because we are in 2004. I have got no idea where that date came from. One thing that I forgot to do for the entire recording of this episode is have Kerbal alarm clock up. So I have no idea the dates of all of these, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame because I like to put those up when I do all of the launches. But anyway, we are launching the exact same thing again, pretty much, with a few slight edits. So I did mention at the beginning of this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about where I've been. So I'm in the middle of my exam period, basically. I've had 4 exams already, and basically I needed to take a step back from my channel. I needed to take a step back from everything and really focus on revision so that I could actually do well at my exams. And now I've got 3 exams left, so I'm not going to be uploading regularly as it stands, but after my final exam on the 11th of June, I should be streaming a lot more, I should be uploading more regularly, more new content will be coming out all the time. I do plan on doing a few streams whilst I still have exams, because the point that I'm at the moment, obviously I've done 4, I've got 3 left, I have a little bit more time on my hands, which is also why I'm doing this video. Now, although this footage is all footage from before I went away and started doing my revision, so I might forget about some things and all of that. But anyway, that's basically where I've been, and I've been a bit quiet recently. So what we're looking at now is basically, this is something new. This is essentially the Olympus Block 2. It's got a bigger reserve fuel tank for getting back, essentially, to the Space Center. I'm going to do a bit of a boost back burn and try and land as close to the Space Center as I possibly can. I was a little bit overzealous with this burning far too far to the west, unfortunately, but I was going on the blue orbit line, and that looked like I was kind of approaching where I'd come from. But to be honest, if I had have just burned straight back the way I came, that probably would have been alright. But we are going to flip this around and fire up those engines again, because we are coming down now at 2,000 meters per second. That is quite fast, and I would really like to slow that down a little bit, because otherwise, well, this booster could potentially disintegrate, but we can just about see the space center there just above the booster now. You can see we are a little bit to the west and a little bit to the north. So I think in future, hopefully, I will land these a little bit closer. It'd be nice to get as close as I possibly could. And this isn't the first time I did this. I did a test of this, and I did get a little bit closer. And I'm just going to put that down to beginner's luck. Hopefully, with a bit more practice, I will get closer and closer and closer until maybe eventually I can land one on top of the VAB. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do that, but that would definitely be a challenge that I would like to try. Anyway, we are now back with the Reactor, performing our translunar injection burn with 7 engines, Hydrolox engines. I can't remember the exact name of the engine, but they are from CH4 and they are crazy good. They have a vacuum impulse of about 490, which is ludicrous, but this thing is very heavy, and in order to get this over to the moon whilst launching it on top of an Olympus, well, I needed all of the delta V that I could squeeze out of this stage, so it does feel maybe a little bit cheaty. I don't know if they have been patched or modified so that they're not quite as ridiculously good, but as far as I'm aware, they haven't. Anyway, we have performed our translunar injection and we are now on our way to the moon. There it is. And we are going to be doing what we always do. We're going to circularize at the moon, and then we are going to attempt to land this as close to the lunar South Pole outpost as we possibly can. That date up there, once again, not entirely sure where that came. That was me missing that whilst editing it. It was probably from the last video. Yeah, the editing for this really not been the best. Random dates all over the place. Who knows what they could mean? Maybe it's a secret code. Maybe it does mean something. Who possibly knows? But anyway, what we're going to do now is we are going to ditch the transfer stage, send it smacking into the surface of the moon, because we don't want to litter the low lunar orbit. No, we are good space citizens. We're going to clean up after ourselves as much as possible. I would like to get rid of as much debris as I possibly can. I don't play with a lot of debris because it slows down my system. But yeah, it'd be nice to get rid of as much of it as I possibly could. Anyway, the Reactor is now coming down over the lunar South Pole outpost. There we go. We can see it just at the bottom of the screen underneath the Reactor. And we are going to be coming down using just a single solitary Super Draco engine to give us a nice, gentle touchdown on the surface of the moon, about 100 meters away from the lunar South Outpost. Lunar South Outpost, lunar South Pole Outpost. Use its full name. Anyway, we're going to take the LOTT, the Lunar Outpost Tortoise Tank, to try and connect this up, and then hopefully drive the very, very heavy Reactor all the way back over to the base and then connect those up there. Now, I ran into a little bit of a problem with this. Usually I can use the legs to kind of shimmy the height of this a bit, but that is the full extent of the legs there. So I was unable to connect these up, which was a real big problem. So I loaded a quick save and didn't ditch those side tanks, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a hover maneuver to get us in position and try and dock that way. I didn't quite manage to dock them. I did have to use the tank to nudge them into place, but we did get those docked, and that is essentially the end of this video. Yeah, all we're going to see now is this landing and using the tank to basically connect them up. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. I'd like to say a big thanks to Bible Guy and the rest of my patrons for their continued support. If you've enjoyed this video, why not give it a like? If you've really enjoyed this video and would like to keep up with the content on my channel, please do consider subscribing. As I've mentioned already in this video, the uploads should hopefully be becoming more frequent over the next few weeks, up until the 12th of June, when finally my exam's done and I can really focus on these videos. But I've been Karnasa, and I will see you later.